Good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Karen Tucker. I'm the CEO of the Churchill Club, and we're gathered here this morning to hear from three distinguished minds, and the title of the program is Wearables, What's Next? We have Eric Friedman from Fitbit, Ayse Ildeniz from Intel, and Thad Starner from Google, and of course Robin Murdoch from Accenture here to lead the conversation. In fact, our thanks to Accenture for opening their doors to us this morning. This is a wonderful space for this type of discussion, and we really appreciate it, especially Ms. Julie Rosendahl. Thank you so much. For our new guests in the audience, a brief introduction to Churchill Club. We're in our 29th year as Silicon Valley's premier business and technology forum, where we convene up to 40 times a year in the interest of encouraging innovation, economic growth, and societal benefit. And we try to also curate the audiences so that it's very meaningful for you to connect with one another, as well as the ideas that you encounter, hearing from the speakers and conversing with them in Q&A. We are a nonprofit, member-supported organization, and we do invite you to consider joining us to remain close to the extraordinary conversations that we convene on a regular basis. Our next program is not announced, but I'm letting you in the room know about it. It will take place next Monday, the 24th of February, and we have the Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, in her first visit to the Valley as Secretary. She will be appearing at a lunchtime event in conversation with LinkedIn CEO Jeff Weiner. If you're interested in coming to that, please just see me after the program. And then after that, we have our Apple's Best Days Ahead. We observed that there are 3 new books out within the space of about 5 months, and we've invited the authors to come and opine on that topic. They've looked at it from the perspective of design, organization and culture, leadership, and collaboration. So I think it'll be a very interesting program. And then on March 19 in the evening in Santa Clara, we present Qualcomm's Peggy Johnson with Liberty Media's Greg Maffei, 2 really interesting thinkers, and they're going to be talking about a diverse set of topics from mobile and education to a number of things that they see relative to innovation opportunities. If you're tweeting, please use hashtag Churchill Club, and you will find other Twitter codes in your printed programs. Our moderator, Robin Murdoch, founded and leads Accenture's Global Internet and Social Business, which is part of the communications, media, and technology practice. Here, he works with top execs from large companies to help them capitalize and thrive with the changing digital landscape. And if you look at the projects that Robin's been involved with for the past couple of decades, he pretty much looks like a next-gen guy. Already in the 90s, he was helping media companies figure out how to bring their core businesses digital. And he also worked with consumer electronics firms to develop their mobile and gaming platform strategies. He's also been a very great advisor to the Churchill Club. So please do give him your warmest welcome this morning, Robin Murdoch.
Thanks, Karen. Well, thank you. Thanks to Karen and the Churchill Club for organizing this event. So wearable computing, wearable technology, incredibly hot topic for 2014, and we're in a period of accelerating growth. We've got an amazing panel in Eric from Fitbit, Ayse from Intel, and Thad from Google. So I'd like to kick it off in traditional Churchill fashion to have you introduce yourselves and your background. So Eric, why don't you go first?
So my name is Eric. I'm one of the co-founders of Fitbit and also the CTO. This is actually the 3rd company my co-founder and I have done together. We've worked together for about 14 years. We start off in kind of large-scale, kind of corporate-style computing. Founded a company doing photo sharing and realized, hey, building stuff for consumers is a lot of fun. And sold that to CNET, and then moved on to say, what's next? And for us, we're really interested in data and social. But we realized to get that data, we need to actually go and do hardware. And we've got no hardware experience other than basic circuits class in a computer science program. So In some ways, we were very lucky we didn't know what we were doing because we wouldn't have been dumb enough to start it. And it's been a lot of fun making the world a healthier place.
Ayse,
Ildeniz.
what are you on?
Okay, is that better? Right. Ayse Ildeniz, I'm the Vice President and General Manager for Business Development and Strategy for the New Devices Group in Intel. Our group is newly formed over summer. It's been more than 6 months or so. And we're looking at wearable technologies and beyond and how to form them and lay the groundwork for it as an Intel company like we've done in the past many, many years. And my background is I'm from Istanbul, Turkey, and I moved to Silicon Valley very lately, just 3.5 months ago, and I used to run the Middle East, Turkey, and Africa region, 67 countries, prior to this role, and was a part of the emerging market strategy for Intel, helped shape that and do things around the world, basically. How we're going to introduce technology to the next billions and billions of people who don't have it has been my focus.
Hi, my name is Starner. I'm a professor of computing at Georgia Tech. I'm also a Googler. Back in 2010, I sent an email to Sergey, who I had met in 1998, about wearable computing and the fact that it seemed like it was getting really compelling recently. I've been wearing a computer as part of my everyday life since 1993, head-up display-based wearable computer, I should say. And much to my surprise, Sergey wrote back, and next thing I know, I was helping out with Project Glass. I've written about 150 papers on things like wearable computing, and currently continue to work with Google in trying to get Glass out there.
So Thad, let's start with you. So 2 decades in wearable technology. It's a hot topic at the moment. Where are we with wearable technology? Where in the trajectory, and what can we expect?
Well, everybody already owns one. So one of the first things we thought would be popular were MP3 players. We were working on the MPEG standard at the time, at least the lab was. And we really, were talking to Sony and said, why would you actually have a Sony Discman, which is this big, when you can actually make your entire music library in the next few years in a small device that's significantly smaller than a Discman? Unfortunately, Sony told us at the time, we just bought Columbia Records, so we feel a flash-based music player will actually encourage piracy, and the rest is history. But currently almost everybody has an MP3 player using their smartphone for that capability. So in some sense, wearable computers are already out there. These fitness devices have become prolific, and also Bluetooth headsets are commonplace. The next thing we're looking at is these head-up displays. And what we're trying to see is how compelling is that to the average user. And I believe it's quite compelling.
Right. Ayse, Intel's obviously making a big bet. So where does Intel see wearable technology?
Right. I think it's interesting why wearables now. I mean, we've been doing this research on sensors and different elements that we have showcased the prototypes at Consumer Electronics Show for probably 10 years. And, as I mentioned, our group formed just only 6 months ago. So I think that it's interesting. It's a trajectory of the technology has matured and the people have matured. But I think, the devices, we can debate for the evolution of the devices forever here. And you all know the, low power computing and the smartness is growing at an incredible pace. But the most important thing, I think, is that it's the people and how are they using it has changed. The people matured in so many ways that actually presented the opportunity. I think, as I mentioned, billions of people today are used to having things on them. And whereas technology used to be very particular, something out there that you used for a specific reason, now it became much more personal. And with the wearables, I think it's almost an extension of that, having the data all the time, but having it for yourself and fixing some pain points that you have wherever you are in the world, but fixing those issues you personally have and how a device is contributing to you, I think is almost unlocking that opportunity. And if we can also make them stylish, then it's going to be much more personal. And they're almost there and becoming, and we can talk about that.
And Eric, Fitbit around since 2007. From what I understand from external data, you are very much the leader in wearable tracking devices. How is that market evolving? What have you seen, and where are we headed?
Well, so, excuse me. So I think that for us, the big thing is we would not really classify ourselves as wearable computing technology. No more than wristwatches in the 1920s would classify themselves as the latest and greatest in mechanical technology. Although there were definitely the engineers of the time who had these skeleton watches where you can see all the gears. Most people just really like the fact they could tell time. And for us, we view kind of where we are now in the same way. And a lot of it's built on work that has come before us in terms of miniaturization, low power, the fact that the processor in here used to take up the size of a room in the 1970s. Same low power processor still can't do floating point arithmetic, but it now can power a Fitbit. And so I think if you looked at our audience, there were definitely the very early adopters after we announced the TechCrunch who were really the engineers and oh, look at this really cool technology. I think if you look at most of our users now, for them, it's an emotional attachment to the data and to the motivator. And for us, I think where we see wearable technology going is once it no longer becomes technology to somebody, then it's pervasive.
So you've been, if we can stay on with you for a second, you've been observing people's behavior with this technology, going from, as you said, the early adopters, back in 2007, 2008, to where we are now, where, like you say, it's become pervasive. How have you seen that sort of interaction and that behavior change? Because your people are uploading a great deal of data to you.
I don't think we've necessarily seen a substantial change in how people perceive it. I think for me, what was a bit of a surprise was actually how quickly it went mainstream to middle America, and how quickly it transitioned from the core people who like technology to the people who like knowing health and wellness data, which is a reasonably different demographic. And kind of then the evolution of form factor and how it's changed over time to, there's still the people who really like the clip-based step counter and altimeter and sleep tracker, where it either goes in your pocket, or for a lot of our female users, they want something that disappears into their lifestyle. They don't want something that's out there on their wrist because their wrist is occupied by other fashionable accessories. So they really want something that clips their bra. Whereas, for a lot of men, they want the fashion accessory, or sometimes they just want it to disappear because they already have the watch or something else on their wrist.
Right, right. Thad, so talking about interaction, the model of interaction with the head-up display is very different from a subtle interaction model like maybe Fitbit. How are you seeing that evolving? Because clearly Google Glass is very, very different from anything we've seen before.
But it has some of the same principles. Paradoxically, when you bring technology closer to the body, it disappears. Think about how you use eyeglasses. It's something that a lot of us have, but you don't think about it at all. It's very different than, say, using opera glasses where you're picking it up all the time, right? So when you bring the technology closer to the body, suddenly it just becomes an extension of yourself. And one of the big things is the time between the intention to do something and your action to do it. It's one of Larry Page's more favorite quotes, which is, what we're trying to do is reduce the time between intention and action. Suppose I'm with a group of students and we're talking about touch screens. If I need to know something about, say, the refractive index of acrylic, I can actually do a quote, do a web search that quickly and find out that the answer is 1.492.
Did you just do it?
Right, that was the interaction.
Very good.
So the ability to have interactions that are that quick, access to knowledge that quickly, is really a different way of thinking, a different way of interacting with the world. And one of the things we've been doing with Glass is making a lot of the things you do with it micro interactions, things you can do in 2 seconds or less. And it seems to be a magic number, somewhere between 2 and 5 seconds. When you can do an interaction, or at least start an interaction in that 2 to 5 second range, it creates no barrier to using it. Anything beyond that, your use of it goes exponentially down.
Right. Ayse, you mentioned fashion, and I know that you've got a deal in place with Barney's. Can you talk a bit about the role of fashion in these devices?
Sure. I think, as a woman, a wearable is very personal, and I said that before. And personal means it needs to be a reflection of you. I I never would want to put something on myself that I don't like, that I don't desire, or there needs to be that emotional attachment to it somehow, that it should represent me in some way. That's what I'd like to wear, at least. So with that in mind, we thought that maybe the fashion industry and the design element in the wearable is very, very important. We've been talking with the fashion world, and then Barney's is the leading retailer, as well as Opening Ceremony, which is a very trendy design house. And together with the CFDA, basically the Fashion Designers of America, we got together and thought about this as to how do we actually find a way to make these things much more stylish and much more acceptable for everybody. So from that perspective, we like to think that in many ways, the designers and the fashion industry should be in the driver's seat rather than the technology companies. I think until today, we, the technology companies, have been driving this, defining the product, defining the features, defining how it should look, whereas to actually unlock this thing and become a natural part of our lifestyle, I think it should be the other industries that should own this and lead it, and we probably would be the ingredients or supporters of it, is how we feel. So the next step now we're thinking, of course, is one, we have a product we're very excited that we intend to ship within this year. It's going to be a smart bracelet, but along with that, the intention is to create a platform together with the Fashion Designers of America, a place where the designers and the technologists can sit together and, you know, argue and discuss the potential and the possibilities of what a wearable should look like.
Eric, I know you've got a relationship with Tory Burch. You want to talk a bit about the role of that for Fitbit?
Sure. So I agree with you entirely. I think that what's going to be wearable to different people is going to be very different. So we've got the Fitbit Flex, which is the world's smallest activity tracker. But the really nice thing is because it's a module, it can then disappear into other types of fashion accessories, whether it be a bracelet, whether it be a pendant, whether I'm personally rooting for cufflinks. So kind of disappear into various different types of lifestyle. But I think you also bring up a really interesting point on that emotional attachment part, which is I think what gets people continuing to wear our products and I think technology in general. So for us, the little things like, yes, we've got the most advanced step tracking algorithms. Yes, we're very proud of all of the high technology that kind of my team is working on. But in some ways, the things that people talk about are when you pick up the Fitbit 1 and it says, a random message that we kind of send it from the server that says, hug me, Eric, or Ariba, Eric, or something like that. And like that emotional attachment, we get our users saying, what would you do if you lost your Fitbit? I would just throw myself on the ground and wait for someone to bring me a replacement because I lose that credit for each step. And it's that emotional attachment then makes people not put down their device, which then integrates in their life and then allows us to do all the really cool things with that mountain of data we're generating.
So can I stay with you, Eric? You just took out the little module from the Fitbit, and it's absolutely minute. And contrast that to the product you launched with. How has it managed to get so small? What are the things that have driven that?
We've actually hired real engineers now as opposed to computer scientists. Probably be one of the big advantages. So technology's definitely evolved, but I think a lot of it really is that we've got a bunch of very smart people working for us, and the things you can create basically in a garage, although we never were in a garage, but the things you can create as a small startup, we've learned a lot. So we built this integrated clip, which then had a lot of electromechanical overhead, was really interesting. So how do we take the wearability features of that, but yet still make it smaller? And I'm trying to figure out what is that right line between you don't want to make it too small, but you don't want to make it too big. Some people want the display, some people don't want the display. Like, how do you, again, fit with what each person needs? Because everyone has very different needs around the stuff that's on them.
Right. And Thad, looking at the early prototypes of Google Glass to where you are now and undoubtedly where you're heading, you talk to how you've managed to pull off what you've done with Google Glass.
Hired a very talented designer. So one of the first things that happened when I came in the project, and a guy named Mark Spitzer has a lot of experience in this, is we kept on hammering, we need a designer, we need a designer, we need a designer. And because you lose right away. It doesn't matter what the device does unless people are willing to put it on, even just to try it. You've lost out of the gate. And so once you put design first and foremost, right, and making the object desirable, it drives a lot of the other decisions. So the size of the battery, right? The first thing is you look at the form factor you're going to work with, and then you make the biggest battery you can, because that's always going to be the technology that changes the slowest. And by the way, again, I have to say that I really like Isabel's work because, I mean, Vogue invited us into the September issue. And that's a huge deal in the fashion side of things. I work with fashion designers. One of the things that you might not realize is Jean-Paul Gaultier actually started doing wearable computing designs in 1993. So the fashion designers actually been there with us. It's just been, the time hasn't been right. But okay, so I'm pushing on fashion and design, but once you look at that, your biggest things are power. That's one of your biggest restrictions. The other thing is attention. You have to design your interface to have the max amount of benefit for the least amount of attention. Then we start looking at some other things that are not quite as scarce, but things like networking. You got to look at the power, like nanojoules per bit, become very important when you're talking about networking. And when you start looking at these design constraints, things like power and heat, networking, the interface, the fashion side of things, every part, every change to one affects the other. And so what you do is you iterate quickly and you try out in a form of a living laboratory. What we did is we brought the academics who've been wearing these things in their daily lives to Google and started working with them, and then made devices, early prototypes that people could actually wear in their heads in daily life. And people got this gut feel of what actually worked for them. Things like head weight are very, very important. Things like how the display is positioned, where the focal distance is. All these things are very important. You don't get them until you've been wearing the device for about a month yourself. And so you really have to make this living laboratory. We have enough people wearing the technology for long enough that you start figuring out what the interactions are, what the challenges are, and what the benefits are.
So can I ask Eric, you've the interaction model that you've set up, and how are you evolving that interaction model? I know in some of the devices there's a really, really basic set of LEDs. So how do you work with that, and how is that kind of evolving over time?
As you mentioned, I think the reason there are LEDs on here is more we want to create something really small, and so therefore how much interaction we need. I think that, as you mentioned, with a smartphone, with the connectivity, the magic of the art form is figuring out what is the right information to do on the right display. So I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned, halfway through, your alarm is going to go off and this is going to vibrate. Or in case of you reach your goal, this thing vibrates. That's a type of display. It's more of a haptic response, but it is a way of communicating information to the user. And then kind of that little joyful dance. Wearing multiple. Fitbit Force, much larger display, much richer display, different type of set of interactions. But again, trying to figure out, well, do we do social here? No, social really belongs on that mobile platform that's always connected, but has a much richer display, versus what belongs on something like a website or a tablet with a much richer data exploration, where it's just too small to do that on a phone-based device.
So yeah, so what is the role of the mobile phone that you carry with you? I mean, I know Fitbit, Google Glass both do rely somewhat on having the extra device. So what's the role of the mobile phone relative to wearables, and how do you see that evolving?
So I think that it's both connectivity platform. It's also a data gatherer. So there's things that make sense to be gathered on the mobile phone. iPhone has recently announced, or it's not so recent anymore, kind of the low power processor that is a sensor gatherer, which I think is great for certain types of things. There are definitely activities that you do where you're going to have your phone on you, and might as well use the massive battery on the phone and the massive data gathering and massive processing power on the phone. For other things, you get home, playing with your kids, the phone, for a lot of people, comes out of the pocket, sits on the counter. The phone is no longer a useful metric at that point. So I think trying to figure out where is the phone with somebody, what processing can you offload, and what display can you offload. And it's all about figuring out where is the right place for each piece of data to live, where's the right place for each piece of processing to live, and where's the right place to display that output.
So Ayse, where does Intel kind of see the opportunity for you around wearables?
In terms of future opportunities?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, let's look at some of the numbers in the forecast that some companies have put out there. So 2017, 300 million units is the number that's being talked about, which is an exciting number. But knowing the numbers of 2013, we have some ways to go there. So it's going to be a journey. I think we as the technology companies will have to figure that how to probably open those floodgates is probably the biggest question mark right now. But if I may even up-level that further, why this is a big deal for Intel, for us, is that we're looking at 2020, 2025, where we're talking about 30 billion or 50 billion Internet of Things opportunities, where humans are probably very important, but just a piece of the bigger, connected, smart universe and puzzle of things. And where when these things can actually seamlessly talk to each other and they make each other much more smarter, then the opportunity for technology and the use for humans is going to be much, much bigger. So from our perspective, we're very vested in finding ways to get into those billions of things to make that universe happen. So from that perspective, we're working on SoCs very heavily. And then different platforms that's going to unlock doors. And just as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it is enabling the other industries, not just the technology industry or the technology stuff people buy. Rather, it's the chairs and the desks and the bottles and your handbags and your different things that are going to be smart and how they interact with you. And when we make them smart, then I think the world will be very interesting, and that this is the underlying factor of our interest as Intel.
So you mentioned sort of the sectors, and I know, Thad, you and I were talking earlier about sort of the way Google Glass could be used in a commercial context. A lot of wearable technology, the focus is very much on the consumer at the moment, but how do you see that evolving in the commercial context, and what are some of the opportunities?
Well, I always take the same view that Jeff Hawkins did with the Palm Pilot. You make a device that is useful to a lot of people. The core functionality goes across the general consumer market. Then people tend to adapt that because it's cheap, because it's out there, people know how to program it. They adapt it to their particular vertical. And we've seen that with the Pilot, for example, but also now with iPads. People are taking iPads and put them into point-of-sale terminals. They're not necessarily the best device for that, but they are good enough, and they're cheap, they're inexpensive, everybody knows how to program for them, so why not? I think we'll see the same thing with these wearable devices, especially these more general purpose wearable devices, that as they get traction in the consumer realm, people will then take them into these vertical markets, like the one I'm working on at Georgia Tech right now is order picking. And I think you'll see 100 million to billion-dollar companies being spun off in these niche markets.
So can you give an example, that order picking example, how wearable technology plays into there?
Well, so $1 trillion worth of goods are picked from 750,000 warehouses every year. 80% of those warehouses are picked by hand. And when you're doing that for something like an automobile assembly line, any errors are a huge issue. You're picking for 6 cars at a time. Those parts then go to the assembly line to be hand added to the car. If you pick the wrong part, it stops the assembly line. It costs a huge amount of money. So what people have been doing is going from these paper-based pick lists where you have 8-digit numbers to wearable computers where it whispers in your ear which part to pick next. Or there's pick-by-light systems where each bin is wired up with the number of parts you need to pick. But the thing is, we found that these pick-by-light systems, these pick-by-voice systems are still not, while they get rid of a lot of the errors, and they're faster than pick-by-paper, they're still not as fast as a head-up display, just showing you a diagram of which bin to pick on that shelf. And so far what we're seeing, this is new results coming out of my lab as of 2 weeks ago, it looks like doing a head-up display is about 1/10 the cost of the current state-of-the-art out there, and eliminates errors, has less errors than the other methods, and is faster. So it's kind of a win all the way around. And so while our original work was done with some older displays, something called the micro-optical SV3, we're now switching over to the glass and seeing how well the a higher position of glass helps with students or picking tasks. We expect some good results soon.
It's fascinating when you start talking about sort of wearable technology in a commercial context. The cost savings to corporations get enormous very quickly.
Yeah, especially things where the errors are, a continual cost run for companies like anybody's doing assembly or order fulfillment.
Right. Now, Eric, Fitbit at the moment is a hardware-driven business model, but you're doing some interesting partnerships, I think, in Japan. Can you talk a bit about sort of other commercial models that seem to be working for you guys?
Well, so I think for us, we have this massive pool of data. When we're still in data collection mode, I do think there is a large premium opportunity on top of that. We've only just started scratching the surface on that. For us, another actually major part of our business is the corporate wellness program. Now, it's a bottoms-up thing. It's the, wearing these computers on you has become not only socially acceptable, but actually something that the employees demand. But then it gives the employer who, as everyone here has heard about the rising cost of insurance. Lots of companies, self-insured companies, a lot of their money is being spent on, chronic disease, things like heart disease, things like diabetes, disease that, getting people to move a little bit more can, reduce those costs. So actually the corporate wellness part, or the large companies have come to us and said, hey, we'd like to give Fitbits to all of our employees. So, the employee feels like they're getting something more than that little cheap pedometer. We also, because all the data is sticky, we actually can show results. And the other interesting thing is then once that employee base is fully wired, we can allow the HR and the CFO to kind of run some experiments like, oh, well, we're now going to roll out this other health program that's either going to be a walking program or a change of behavior program or a standing program for standing desks. How's that being used? And then because everyone is wired and the data is all going up to the internet, we can generate reports. We can kind of help them understand, are these other third-party programs that are not Fitbit successful? Which is also really compelling. Like, it suddenly starts going to the bottom line.
And the deal you have with SoftBank, so I was reading it's $5 a month. What does that? What's the scope of that?
So it's an interesting experiment in the leased model as opposed to the owned model. So it's something that we're trying in Japan, and so they have a wellness portal, and they provide coaching and little things that let you see how you age over time, if you're more active or less active, and you get a Fitbit in as part of that. And so the Fitbit data feeds into that coaching and wellness program.
Right. So when you talk about sort of there's the hardware services, Google Glass advertising-based business model. I mean, what are you thinking? Or is it too early days?
I leave that to Sergey.
You leave that to Sergey. Ayse, from an Intel perspective, are you looking sort of consumer-centric, commercial? Are you looking both? How are you guys thinking about the space?
We're looking at scale, scale, scale. It's everything, everywhere for the moment. What I wanted to mention is that it's the two things we put out to the market that I'm hoping is going to create that scale effect. We brought this board called the Galileo board for the maker community, for the young kids and the makers, and or those of us who feel like a kid at all times, I guess, and to make robots and do wonderful things based on the Arduino. It's a great platform. And then the other one that we introduced is the Edison, which is a computer as big as an SD card, which, I don't know, 10 years ago it would have been this big probably as a computer that it is this small today, which we will be putting out to the market in summer. But the idea is that the vision I priorly talked about, which is that, millions of people can actually take these smart chips and then power and make things smart. And then we're hoping that it's going to create a scale effect and a whole development community, as well as the ISVs and the people in the middle who's going to create usage models that we can't oversee today, is the whole idea that we basically, as I said, is unlock those floodgates is the idea.
Great. Thad, these devices are throwing off, I mean, you're on particularly a huge data exhaust, a continual video stream, and all of this data.
No, let's be clear. It's not a continuous video stream that would kill your battery in just a few minutes, right? Especially if you're trying to do something like a Google Hangout. You do about 20 minutes of battery life. It's not designed for that. It's designed for short micro interactions.
So, but the reality is that there's ever more data coming from these devices. How do you make sense of it? And I suppose, secondly, when we have these disparate devices, are they going to be able to talk to each other and, bring that data together?
Well, one of the things that we're going to see is the cell phone acting more like a central hub. And these devices are going to be littered about your body, where your sensors are, where your manipulators are, stuff where your eyes are, where your ears are, where your hands are. And the cell phone is going to be like the old ISA bus on the PC. Right? It's the one that's going to talk to all these different peripherals. And depending on what you need that day, you put on something different. And just like the ISA bus caused this huge amount of third-party manufacturing of cars that did everything under the sun, and we eventually got convergence on the PC, as Nicholas Negroponte used to say. We're going to have the same sort of convergence on the body. We're going to have a body network that's going to be very low power. It's going to connect all these things together, and you're going to have a device that uses that to do things like better fitness tracking, uses that to make a better intelligent assistant that can suggest things to you, like perhaps taking a different way to work that's actually slightly longer, or it actually goes up more hills to improve your cardiovascular health, or something that can, as Google Now does currently, tell you to leave a little bit earlier because there's traffic out there. So I think what we'll see is a lot of different devices putting together data in an ecosystem that really can help the user as an intelligent assistant, almost like a good English butler that provides you information or provides you services before you need it. This whole idea of just-in-time information retrieval, just-in-time services is going to become a big thing.
Eric?
So it's interesting, you talked about the cell phone as the bus, and you mentioned kind of the smart chair, although I'm really interested in knowing what the smart chair does.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. I think that I can definitely see the cell phone being the bus. I think, okay, putting on my technology hat as opposed to my business hat, I think what excites me is the fact that on these devices, we're dealing with microprocessors where every byte of code space is valuable, every byte of storage space is valuable. The battery is just like, it's the size, I don't know if anyone here knows what a chiclet is, like this really tiny piece of gum. That's roughly the size of the battery on this. It's 17 milliamp hours. Your phone, by comparison, is roughly about 2,500 milliamp hours. So many orders of magnitude difference. The device here and part of the power draw on here is being driven by this cloud computing on the site where we've got mountains of data. The engineers who live in that world don't think about bytes. They've got garbage collection. They've got things that basically just memory. Who cares about memory? I've got 128 gigs of memory on this device. Like, it's a very different way of thinking about computing. And obviously, they do care about memory. It's just at such a different scale. But yet, for example, data security. How do you develop encryption that works on here where you can't do floating point math, but yet works well to the cloud all the way end to end and makes it compelling? To me, those are really exciting technical problems that we get to solve. And so I think what's going to be interesting is where does some of this data, like stuff from the Google Glass or stuff from Fitbit, what can we run here? Like what kind of processing do we run here? What kind of stuff do you do on the cloud? And then Fitbit has an open ecosystem. We actually, rather than having the API being driven on the phone-based layer, it's more driven through the cloud-based layer, just because that's where we have the interesting computational analysis of the data, which then comes back to the phone and it goes in a round circle.
I'll put my tech hat on.
Okay.
Let's slug this one out.
Yeah.
So for every bit you get from the cloud, you can actually get 10,000 bits from flash memory. So suddenly, things that, suddenly a fat client instead of a thin client makes sense. And every time we've seen these devices, they've gone more and more fat client through time. When you look at things from simply a physics standpoint, sometimes it pays more to cache a lot of computation and data locally. Matter of fact, Larry and Sergey did a paper in 1998 that actually plotted the increase in static content on the internet and the increase in flash memory. And the intersection of these two exponential curves are right about now. You can actually cache a good chunk of the static content on the internet on your phone and just have retrieval there, which is so much more energy efficient than trying to get it from the web. And so while I agree, getting stuff in the cloud is important, it turns out that the balance is often, it's much better to cache, especially when you have intelligent sensing and when your network is low power and when you have connection, that sort of thing.
But I think,
Karen.
but I think that's true when you only care about your data. But again, in our world, and I do have very much that health and wellness hat on. But the thing that gets me up early to go to the gym, okay, nothing gets me up to go early to the gym now. But back when I went to the gym, the thing that got me up was that peer pressure of my buddy waiting for me, who was going to mock me, or who I was just going to let down because, well, why did Eric sleep in and I was, lifting?
I agree, but you use the few bits you do for that sort of thing, for those little few bits of real-time data that actually matter the most.
I think that, yeah, I agree that there's definitely, that's the reason we send steps up as opposed to the raw, accelerometer strain.
Yep.
But I do think that the magic happens when you have that cloud connectivity, that hub connectivity and the device connectivity.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're violently agreeing here.
We're violently agreeing.
I've one final question, and then we'll take questions from the audience. And Thad, I know this is an area that you've looked at. When will I not have to charge my device and you'll be able to just harvest the energy?
Okay, anybody want to make multiple billions of dollars, figure out how to tap into the power cycle of human food. Seriously, it's just possible. You can actually, when we talk about 200 calories in a can of Coke, right? That's not 200 calories in physics sense. That's 200,000 calories in the physics sense. You could actually, if you could actually get the power of a can of Coke, you can actually run your laptop computer for days, right? So one of the things you then look at is use the human body as an energy source. I recently did something in my mobile ubiquitous computing class where we figured out that if you could just hype up the human metabolism system to be about the pace of when you're hiking, right, throughout the day, you can jump over a 20-story building. Let's see if this is right. 200 times, right? There's enough power there. Just in the excess energy you're putting off. In the meantime, what we're relegated to doing is doing things like body heat to generate power, which is very inefficient. Or self-winding watches have existed for centuries, and they can recover power from motion. The ambient power around the human body is tremendous. You can do a lot of stuff with it. The problem is we're still about order of magnitude off.
Right.
Being able to say, create a generator that runs your phone just from your walking. Now there's your next trick, right? Make a Fitbit that's your cell phone that just uses that the sensing, the energy of sensing to power the cell phone.
Pretty much every engineer who applies for Fitbit, they come in like, I've got this amazing idea for you guys. You can basically put like a simple kind of device in your device or in their Fitbit that basically harvested human power and charged it. And actually, the technology's there. Like, piezo films can actually harvest a lot of power. And so it's something that we have looked at. The problem is it then changes the form factor, and ultimately that goes back to the wearable. Like, you've got a very extended ring on. Maybe there is enough space for a lever arm there that could capture it. If you have a narrow ring, you couldn't do something like that. And so I think that one of the challenges with kind of the power harvesting technologies is, unless they become really small and basically don't interrupt the overall flow of the device, I don't see them being adopted.
Shoe inserts.
We have to have time for questions.
That's the chair thing.
That's the chair thing. There we go. It's the knee bouncers. The knee bouncers are very good at wearable technology.
God, I'm really looking forward to the day to charge things. Questions? I have a question there. I want to bring the microphone.
Jack Norman. So privacy is a big issue for some people, apparently a non-issue for others. Where are we going with privacy for the U.S. in the future with all these sensors and data?
So the question was about privacy. Where are we going with privacy and the data that's thrown off from these devices? Eric, do you want to take that one?
So I think it probably depends on the type of device and the type of data, and the type of company. So at Fitbit, our view, and it's something we struggled with because, as I mentioned, the more we have evidence that shows, if each friend you add, or if you add a friend to your Fitbit kind of community, you suddenly move about 27% more. So that's a massive increase in terms of how you do it. And I'd be happy to kind of walk through how we actually did that as a double-blind experiment and all kinds of other cool stuff. But so there is that definite interest in the customer's side to make it more social, but yet allowing people to control that data. So kind of the policy we've come up with is your data is yours. So we allow you to access it via an API. We don't share it publicly. We don't sell advertising against it. But we do allow you to share it. And so if you add a friend, we have a default set of controls that we feel like this is going to allow you and your friend to make each other healthier and move more. You can share more, you can share less, but we have this defaults once you choose to share. You can choose to share with Twitter. Like, some people want to tweet their step count. Very few people want to tweet their weight, although I will say there are a surprising number of people who set up auto tweets on their weight. People share on Facebook, and so it's all about giving the people the control. I do think with our type of data, we want to be a little bit more on the side of being conservative and have the people opt in to more of the stuff than opt out. But then once they opt in, I don't think people want to think about it enough to kind of try and micromanage their data. They want you to be smart and make some intelligent choices of, this is the type of data I'm sharing with my friend. Like, I'm probably not sharing my weight information with you, even if we're friends, but I probably would share my step count. And so making those intelligent decisions as well for people.
So those are the techniques we're using. That's not the question. The question is, where are we going? Sorry. Where are we going in the U.S. with the concept of privacy? Where is that heading? Not where each individual company is putting their own little.
Well, let me walk into that one. So to me, privacy is very important. I'm a privacy fundamentalist from the Alan Weston sense. Are you familiar with Weston's writings on this stuff? Yeah, okay. So you know what I'm talking about here. It's part of what I teach at Georgia Tech about whenever you design any new technology, you're always taking this stuff into account. And what I'm encouraged about is the fact that people are more sophisticated about privacy these days than they used to be. People are starting to think about it. If you actually look at the younger generation now, people used to say, oh, they're sharing everything indiscriminately and they don't know what they're doing and the implications in the future. No, that's not the case anymore. What we're seeing is that these kids are getting relatively sophisticated about what they share and when, and they're curating it, and they're thinking ahead about it. It's not the Wild West anymore. We're actually seeing Americans in this country start thinking about it. If you think about the Privacy Act of 1974, that was a very good law. It was a very intelligent way of looking at that, and that stuff led to many other nations around the world thinking about it. So the basis is there. But what I think we need to do is actually get people more tools on how to think about privacy intelligently, so they can actually evaluate these devices as they come out. I'm actually encouraged by what I'm seeing, believe it or not, about what the common person in America is starting to think about with regards to this. And I think that as a privacy advocate and fundamentalist, that one of the best things I can do as a teacher is provide better tools of how to think about and how to evaluate stuff.
Great.
Can I just, completely different perspective, if I may. Nothing to do with privacy, but I can't help myself share this with you folks because it's something I feel incredibly strongly on, is you guys all been watching around the world what an amazing effect having the social networks is creating everywhere else around the world. I was in the heart of Egyptian revolution when it was happening. All my employees were out there in Cairo and was there every 2 months, and how incredibly excited they were. And the day that Mubarak shut down the internet, and the reaction from the people and how they felt about it. And today in many countries, including mine, how closely governments are actually utilizing internet, if I may use the word, to make sure that people are following the code and the way that they would like them to follow the code, and in many different ways, actually probably similar to the events that are happening in America, keeping a tab of who's doing what on the internet. So I think this is an incredibly important issue, not just for US, but around the world, since internet became such a strong voice for people to individually express themselves, that privacy even matters much more socially everywhere else too. So I feel very strongly about that.
Great. Next question on wearable technology.
Hi. So outside of health, I'm wondering what you guys see as being like the craziest or most fun application of wearable technology coming up in the future.
Oh, I got one for you. I have a glove that you put on, And it will, in the amount of time you've been listening to us, you have learned the first 45 notes to how to play Amazing Grace on a piano without your attention. So this is how it works. You download the song in MIDI to your smartphone. You put on this fingerless glove. It has little vibration motors at each base of each finger. And you hear the song being played in the background in your head. And as each note is played, it taps your finger. And it turns out that even while you're paying attention to us, not paying attention to it, you get the muscle memory of the song in your hand. And then you can walk up to the piano once you figure out where the first note is. Your hand just becomes possessed and knows what to do. It's really, really freaky. It's so much fun. And we now have results where we can actually teach you how to type. This is new stuff coming out right now. Just getting some results on this. It looks like we can use it to teach Braille, which is cool, how to type Braille. And we also have a study that we had these gloves on people who had tetraplegia due to partial spinal cord injury. And over 8 weeks, they learned 8 different songs passively. And it actually improved the sensation in their hands. Right? So this is a way to do passive haptic rehabilitation. Put on this glove, go read your email, go do your driving, whatever else, and the thing actually does rehab for you without your attention. Cool. So this is one of these things where I didn't believe it at first. So we did about 6 different studies on it. We're getting some, the idea that you can actually download haptic skills to your hands, that's really kind of cool. It's very matrixy. So that's the one I'm most excited about right now. I don't know how far we can take this. We're going to push on it for a while. This is my academic research, by the way.
Eric, nothing from a Fitbit perspective?
Well, I think the things we're really excited about we're working on, so therefore I can't talk about them, of course.
Go on. Ayse, anything in the labs at Intel here?
Well,
Wanting to share?
Nothing to share, but personally, I'm waiting for the day the wearable actually is going to do something great, that it senses a woman's emotions, and if she feels depressed, calls the best friend and gets her to tell you, you look wonderful, and this is how you should feel, and this is why you're great, and just turn into this incredible organic little butler, as you mentioned before, that actually does a normal human need. I can't wait for that day, and secondarily, I think, as I mentioned before, I mean, we talked about the power problem. 70% of Africa does not have electricity, right? There's humongous problems we need to fix before we can actually make all this technology work for everybody on the planet. So I can't wait for the day that Wearable will probably take care of some of the issues of those people on the ground, but I'm sure we'll get there very soon.
Since they can't talk about their stuff, I'm an academic, I can talk about my stuff. Look up Fido, Wearable Computers for Dogs. Mobile Music Touch, the thing that teaches you your hand skills. Look at our Smart Sign on Glass, way to learn language while you're walking around. And also look at our chat work, which is a wearable computer to help marine mammalogists do two-way communication work with dolphins.
Next question.
I guess my question is about these devices that require hardware. And is there a comfort gap or a knowledge gap between the current set of investors in the venture and other investing communities and the types of investors that are going to need to invest in this wearable technology?
That's one for you, Eric.
So I think that really depends on the person pitching, which I think actually has more to do with whether people can raise than anything else. But I think almost every VC that I've encountered that has been around for a while has been burned by a hardware company. They tend to consume larger amounts of cash, although they're getting much, much cheaper. I can remember during one of our early pitches, we had said, oh yeah, we're on the market, et cetera, and we spent on the order of a couple $1 million at that point. And they basically didn't believe us. It took one of the associates to say, oh no, they're actually shipping and profitable. It's not you can actually do that on that much money. But I think that it is a major investment. I think it takes a braver investor. We've got a very supportive board as a result, and they've actually now gone on and invested in a whole bunch of other Internet of Things type companies, actually together. So I think it's something that people just have to work to get over and get a comfort zone. And just like some people want to invest in B2B and some people really prefer B2C, it's just going to be a comfort zone thing.
I'm glad you pitched directly to Sergey. So ahead of that. What have you been able to do at Google?
Oh, well, one of the nice things about Google is you have the integration with all the cloud stuff, as we were talking about before. Having direct integration with SMS, with Gmail, with things like Google Now. Google Now is amazingly cool on this stuff. You know, things like Field Trip. Thing that I love right now is I'm doing a lot of travel because I have some sick family, and I'm discovering new things about my hometown that I never knew before because glasses automatically providing me new little historical artifacts. It's so much fun. But anyway, so the thing that Google really brought to it was not just the guts to do it. I mean, it really does take guts to do this stuff, but also the sort of infrastructure to really support it and bring out services the whole way through.
Got it. Next question.
Hey guys, Brent Bloom with Accenture. Curious to hear your predictions about the growth of wearables in the consumer space versus the enterprise space. If you think about the consumer side, you've got a bunch of people you have to convince that it's fashionable. You've got a fragmented sales channel, and you know, just in general, I think a tougher battle on the value prop's a little bit more murky for some people. On the enterprise side, you've got deeper pockets. You know, you've got your automotive assembly line where 5 minutes of saved time is millions of dollars, and they're not fashion conscious. How do you guys think these two cycles will evolve?
First of all, they are fashion conscious. Just automobile workers are fashion conscious.
Okay.
Let me give it a go, and you guys go ahead. I think revenue-wise in the short term, enterprise is a more obvious opportunity. But the real problem is to make this be used by masses, and enterprise space only is not going to bring that. So we must collectively find the way to open it up for usage models for millions and billions of people, and that's when it's going to become a much bigger consumer opportunity in the long run. But we have some ways to get to that number is how we're looking at it. But in the short term, there's so many different cool, already working, money-making enterprise applications that there are. But you know, it's a chicken and egg story. Is it the enterprise space and the people adopt that, or vice versa, which we have seen in the past? Both of the applications happen. So we're yet to see, but I think the longer run big opportunity is in consumer.
I would also say that we're seeing more bring your own device type interaction. Excuse me, be it phones to work. You know, it used to be your employer provided your phone. Now it's becoming increasingly common that you bring your own. With Fitbit, we see people bringing their devices to the office, which is what gets their employer to then go and buy devices for everyone. And you look at things like, so our CRO is from Camelback. You know, in the military, people were wearing their Camelbacks, and that's what then got the military to then buy Camelbacks for everyone and deploy it across the field. And so I actually think that because a lot of this technology is so inexpensive, things like Kickstarter, so you know, I think that's really leading the way on a lot of this investment, showing demand. But because I think there's such consumer demand, people are bringing it into the office, and they go, oh wait, this is making me more productive. Let me roll this out across the entire company.
Let me follow on that. One of the big stories there is BlackBerry. Back when it was a security risk to bring your phone to the Navy, to Office of Naval Research, or to any of these military things, they resisted doing any specialized stuff for the Navy unless it failed. But people got so addicted to their BlackBerries that the military had to adapt to it. And so in that case, the consumer level stuff actually forced a major customer in the US military as it just became part of people's lives. And so I think that, again, going to the consumer is the way to actually enable a lot of these verticals, a lot of these niche places.
Super. I've got time for one more question.
Hi, Michael McCorkadale. I have a question on the mobile phone. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and actually the discussion opened up with the MP3 player, which of course is now aggregated into the mobile phone with the new motion coprocessor on the new iPhone, which of course tracks steps as a pedometer. It has a camera. In fact, I can use Siri to query something just like on Google Glass. I'm curious of the panel's comments on the mobile device maybe being the ultimate wearable in the end. Does everything end up aggregated there?
Well, as I said before, you're going to get this convergence effect where just like the home PC became your fax machine, not that people use faxes anymore, your game machine, your email, your TV, all that stuff kind of aggregated onto the home PC. You're going to see that same sort of convergence on the body. And so a lot of these specialized devices are becoming, you know, peripherals onto into a suite of devices on the body. Now, there are a lot of things. It's very hard to make on-the-go interfaces. So there's still going to be always these other platforms, these, as Mark Weiser would say, the tabs, pads, and walls, boards. So I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. But you're going to see a whole lot more stuff coming to the body for these short, fast interactions.
So I've got a quick question. Can I ask, where's your phone right now?
It's in my bag.
That's the answer to your question. I think that mobile phone is going to be on some people all the time, many people part of the time, and some people far fewer of the time. And I think there is definitely that gender gap there. And I'm sorry, I did not mean to call you out on that. But I think that the mobile phone is great for certain types of things. You know, we have the Fitbit algorithms running on the Fitbit. If you download the latest Fitbit app, it runs on your iPhone. We're also going to probably do a really interesting blog post. There's definitely different usage behaviors we see between people with the wearable devices and people with a phone, and that's to come.
Art,
No, go ahead.
No. You finish.
After you.
I was just going to compliment, because we're in sync here, in the sense that I think people will continue to wear wearables if they do unique and specific things that they bring it to them other than the phone. So they have to be either complementary or uniquely differently standing, but it has to be distributed. And then we do think that there's going to be many different types of devices that's going to exist, at least a couple of years down the road, that it's going to take a while for the convergence to happen. So it's finding those unique features that bring value when on its own standalone, a wearable becomes valuable is important. Unless we figure that out, it's going to be difficult to proliferate this thing, is our view.
Right. And if you look at
this is why glass is standalone. I mean, you don't need your phone. You can use Wi-Fi or local functions.
And I think if you look at the things that have been subsumed by a phone, you know, your GPS, your camera, like the cameras right before they were subsumed by phones were basically phone in shape and form factor. Your mobile GPS, that's basically the phone in shape and form factor. So a lot of the things that kind of got subsumed were that same shape. It's interesting though that, you know, as a phone became your camera, DSLRs actually started taking off and becoming ever more popular. So it's interesting that kind of it then spawns another kind of industry as well.
Fantastic. Karen.
I think for women to have technology, first they have to learn to put pockets in women's clothing.
There we go. Let's thank our speakers again for their candor and sharing their perspectives with us. And Robin for guiding the conversation so well. As a small gift for you this morning, we have a wearable. It is the Churchill Club speaker t-shirt.
All right.
Please wear that in good health. The recording of this program will be available on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Churchill Club, maybe even this afternoon, but probably tomorrow, barring any unforeseen difficulties. So please do spread the word if you enjoyed the conversation. Hope to see you soon at a Churchill program, and you have been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much. See you next time.